Hi, everyone, and welcome to our series on fostering mental health. So excited to introduce our guest today. He is the superintendent of the Port Washington School District, and he's also an associate professor of educational leadership at Long Island University and an instructor at Stony Brook. So you're keeping yourself busy. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And this is a very important topic, very near and dear to me. So I appreciate your efforts in getting it out there for everyone to listen.
Well, I have been following your LinkedIn for years now because I think you do such a wonderful job of talking about mental health, social emotional learning, and physical learning, the importance of all of these areas of the whole child. And I think you really bring that out, and you're very vocal about that. I've seen some of your TED Talks. I think I just listened to a podcast. So you're getting this information out, and you just published a new book. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start with the book very quickly. It's called Staying Grounded. And basically, for school administrators, especially during these times, it's incredibly important to just try to stay as grounded as possible when there's so many forces that pull you away from your real work, which is, of course, serving students. Speaking of serving students, as we're talking about mental health and social and emotional awareness and what that means and just wellness as a whole, now is the time more than ever, I believe, to not only stay grounded, but to really become aware of what the wants and needs of our students, what they will be come September. And the book really just gives you 12 simple principles to follow. One's the inner journey, like the fact that we actually get to know ourselves and take care of ourselves, how incredibly important that is. And then the other is the outer journey, which is part two, which is, understanding not only what a child goes through each day. I recommend that school administrators actually shadow kids for the day, which is incredibly, we don't do enough. So we create these policies, we create these rules, but we don't see how it impacts kids or students, I should say, or staff, right? So, and the final one has to do with child development. We don't really take enough time to understand developmentally where kids are.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's through the lens of Piaget or understanding what basic needs being met, if you talk about Maslow and what that means. So I try to just a sprinkling of everything and 40 leadership stories. So it's not just my voice doing this. You get to hear from other school leaders and how it impacts their work, which I think is incredibly important. And then especially, like I said, now, these are just unprecedented times right now, right? So what skills do we need as administrators and educators to make sure our kids flourish when they come back? Because it's going to be very different. The landscape will be very different than when we left in March, that's for sure.
And I think it will be so important that you have that foundation with your students. And I think that shadowing is a critical piece. I've read so much about that, and I've seen that in practice being so critical because we have no idea what kids are going through as adults. And I talked to an administrator who just got through the end of the day with a student and was so exhausted. And then the student went home and probably had 3 to 4 hours of homework a night.
That's right.
They are exhausted, particularly our high school students. And there's so much pressure and what that does to them throughout the day. And for them to know that people care about that.
It's true. I say this a lot. Dr. Peter Gray from Boston College says this more often than I do. Hasn't been saying it a lot longer too. We tell kids what to do from the moment they wake up until they go to bed, right? So they are programmed for adults telling them what to do, how to do it, how long to do it for. And there's very little downtime in their lives. Very different than the way I grew up in the 70s and 80s, that's for sure, where we were allowed to be bored. We were allowed to make our own decisions, with a lot of things that are taking place in our life. Every minute wasn't accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have hours of homework. So it's true. It's one thing to shadow a student from, let's say, first period to ninth period, but then really what happens after ninth period until they go to bed. And I think many of us, including parents and educators will be really surprised with what that looks like. And a lot of it is self-inflicted by schools, from homework to taking, sometimes taking like 2 or 3, activities after school and all those different things. So yeah, I'm very worried about that. I think Peter Gray said too, we're serving a generation of students who are more anxious, depressed, and suicidal than any generation before. And for the most part, we really haven't changed our practices as far as what we're doing. And that has to change, especially now.
I think that when you look at what we know about the brain science, I think as we've learned more about what's good for the brain, education has gone against that. I think so many of the education practices, I used to like to say that some kids learn in spite of education, not because of it. Um, and it's because we so often are fighting against the natural tendencies. And it's hard for kids to learn when they're anxious and depressed. And that's
It,
what,
it, it, no, I was gonna say I totally agree with you. And they're I mean, you know this, right, better than anybody. They're natural learners. They're designed and born to learn. And I think schools do a very good job of extinguishing that and dimming that light, so to speak. And so like, there are a lot of things we need to do in a much different way. We need to learn from other countries, from other schools that are not public schools, that are really firing on all cylinders. And how do we bring that into, let's say, the common school experience? Because if we don't do it now, I'm very concerned that it'll be way too late. And to really focus on wellness within, that should be one of the top things that we focus on in school. Is we have them for what, 14,000 hours, right? 13 years, 14 years if you have them in pre-K. And are they really ready for this world? They may be ready to circle in little A, B, C, and D bubble answers, but as far as getting ready for the real world, I don't know if we're doing such a great job.
I love that you draw on your trip to Finland so much in your work, and how you learned from your experiences while you were there. And often when I give presentations to teachers, I have an activity where I give out marshmallows and toothpicks and ask them to build a structure that's freestanding. And it's so funny to watch because I never tell them that they can't work together, but often they don't. They just figure it's an individual. And I had a friend of mine had flown out from Finland to do the course. He was coming anyway, and he said, "Hey, can I join the course?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." And he had never seen it before either. I didn't give him the hint about it. But as soon as I handed them out, as soon as I gave the instructions, he said, "Well, can we work together? Let's work together, guys." She never said we couldn't work together. And he was begging them, and they were like, "That's cheating. That's cheating. You're cheating."
Unbelievable.
And I was like, "I never said you couldn't work together." But it was just this natural tendency for him that, well,
Yep.
we should collaborate.
It's we Schools have been designed, and some of it's cultural too, for sure. But yeah, that collaboration piece. I don't know. It's funny that you say they're cheating, or you're cheating. It's that would totally happen in, I think, in any school, in any schoolhouse in America. And that is the one thing, well, one of the few things that I was blown away by when I was in Finland is, yes, they do like to collaborate, but the paradox of less is more there is really, it's in your face, to the school day being shorter, to the school year being shorter, to having breaks throughout the day, to recharge, to physically move often, to actually trust kids to do things that we would never trust them to do. Kids are allowed to climb a tree, in school, like 10, 15 feet in the air without 10 attorneys underneath, seeing how much they can sue the school for, right? Kids taking risks, kids using power tools when they're in first grade. I mean, would never allow those things to happen. Yet, when you mix all those ingredients together, you have kids who are reading at a, reading, I'm sorry, speaking 3 different languages. By the time they're in third grade, So it's not like they're any smarter there, and it's not like they're any better off there. I mean, there are unemployment in many of the places in Finland I was at was well over 20%. Lots of immigrants there. It's not an all white population by any stretch of the imagination, but they focus on equity. They focus on whether you're in Lapland all the way, almost by the North Pole, or you are in Helsinki. You're stepping almost into the same school, and their number one focus is wellness. It's child wellness and teacher and anybody who serves kids to make sure they're okay. And it's a much different lens to see things through.
They really do listen to the brain science too. I mean, we know about brain breaks. We know so much from the brain science that we can take into schools in terms of that wellness. In our model, we have the ant, which is the character with all the tools for a healthy brain, and they integrate all of those into their school day. I once went and did a presentation at a school, and I was talking to some of the students. They were not allowed to eat in class. Their school day started, I think, at 7:30, and their lunch period was at 2 o'clock. How
I
can
mean, come
you
on.
expect kids to learn?
First of all, adults can't last more than 45 minutes. So, I mean, to expect a child to do that is almost criminal.
It
It's
is.
crazy.
So we need to integrate these things and recognize how do our brains work? How do we have that? And they're just doing it naturally. And I think the point you've brought up about respecting teachers are respected
Oh,
and trusted, and I think that that's important as well.
it
Um,
makes a big difference for sure. It's true. They are held in such high regard, and the teacher training is pretty intense too. Though they're trained like NASA astronauts, so they are trained very very well. But they're also trained in a very holistic way, not just their content area. They're trained in a very holistic way. And yeah, and there are no superintendents in Finland, right?
yeah,
That says a lot as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. I think that the trust is a big issue. I think that they hold them in high regard, and I think that they do a fantastic job of understanding. And I wish we would move in that direction in this country. I think some areas are. We're recognizing some of the stuff, and we're seeing it integrating. I'll be curious how all of this change with the pandemic. Will there be changes in what we what we do with schools?
I hope so. It would be a shame to think that we are in a time where universally it's like one, and I'm not trying to say this in a in a way that doesn't sound like I'm slighting all the terrible things that have taken place. But this is a huge case study, right? You couldn't design almost a better research opportunity. If we lose what we have learned during this time and we go back to the way we were, to me, that would be criminal as well. It'd really be a sin because I think we are learning positives, some things that we can apply moving forward, and we need to let go of the things that we held near and dear for the past 100 years, 50 years, as far as what we thought was working for kids. That goes against the science, as you say, and I would totally believe that. And so the question becomes, is there enough courageous leadership to move that forward, and not just in pockets, in little bits, a little school district here, a school district there. Will that become statewide policy? Will that become part of some regulation moving forward? I guess only time will tell, but we will see.
I know that New York, a lot of states had begun to implement legislation requiring mental health literacy in schools. New York
Correct.
was the first to require it from K through 12. Um, and one of the things that we kept getting feedback about was there's very little to help teachers in order to do so, and that they're not feeling prepared to do that. So hopefully this, and in particular knowing that so many kids are going to go back having experienced trauma. I mean, we've all experienced trauma. We have collective trauma, we have transgenerational trauma, and individual trauma, and that's going to really play itself out as we head back into school. And school, we're going to have to address that, because if we don't, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think, moving forward too, I guess I liken it to if you look at what consists of a school day and how much kids are learning or at least exposed to. I can't say they're really learning, but let's just say, their day consists of 8 or 9 periods a day, right? And one of them hopefully is lunch where they can, take a brain break and all that good stuff. But something has to give. Like we can't just add a 10th period and let's just say it's a wellness period and we're going to talk and we're just going to focus on a program, whatever it may be. That's there. I don't think that's the way to do it. In my humble opinion, I think we need to almost like what the Finns do in many ways is go with less is more as far as what kids have to learn and be exposed to and integrate. I think in a holistic way for us to really refocus and recalibrate how kids can learn how to not only self actualize at some point, but to self regulate and to take that journey within to help with all these different things because this is not going away. The pandemic goes, let's just say, subsides over the next 6 months or a year. Something else in a child's lifetime as they become adults, something will happen again, right? And they have to learn. They need these tools, I believe, in order to be successful. I know you do too. And then what better place to teach them than while we have them in school? But the trick is, right, is from a professional development standpoint, who's doing the teaching and and where is this information coming from? And how do we provide those opportunities for teachers who are already exhausted and are already at their wits' end because of the way the year ended, to make sure they are prepared, to do these things. So the timing is tough.
I agree, although I have to say, if we can give teachers tools that they can use and information that they can use that's going to make their own lives more simple,
Oh
and
yeah.
that they can take this information and apply it at home, apply it with their own kids, apply it and have them feel more confident about fostering their own mental health. I think that that is really where we need to go. And that's what we're trying to do is really give those tools, that common language to how can we use any challenge in order to build resilience and foster mental health.
I love
And
that.
on that note, I'm going to switch over because I would love to make sure we get to how are you fostering mental health?
So, yeah, that's a great question. I would say I was doing a lot better before this happened. I was a lot more consistent, that's for sure. Because routines are, I know they're an important part of most of our days, as far as how we do that, as far as the day unfolds. So I set my stage very early in the morning, every morning, even now, 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, I wake up. I know people are like, why would you do that? Like, why would you torture yourself? But I have to be honest with you, it's the only time I have to myself. And I'm in a pretty good place. So for about an hour, I'll meditate and I'll go for a walk and I read, I journal, and then I start my day. And I do that every day until the gym opens, which I'm not a big gym fan, but at least if you go for a run at the gym or you do something, that taking care of yourself allows you to take care of others, right? So that I have found is incredibly important. So you're not really being selfish. You're taking care of yourself again to make sure you have enough energy, whether it's physical or mental or spiritual energy, to give back to others. And that's the way I set the stage every morning, and that's why I go to bed earlier and earlier each night. To be honest with you.
That's great. I don't quite do it at 4:30, but I also get up before anyone else in the house and I need that alone time too. We need to have self-care in order to do the work to help others as well. I think that's good.
It is, yeah, and it's not being. I don't think it's being selfish. The reason why I get up so early is it's not masochistic in nature. It's because my second to youngest, gets up at 5:30 every morning. So I need to get up at least an hour before her in order for me to, make sure my day is underway. So yeah, if she got up at 6:30, I get up at 5:30, but that's not the case.
How old
And
is
you
she?
know what? Oh, she is 7, and then my youngest is 5. So yeah, and there's no changing her sleep schedule either. So I tried everything.
That's funny. I'm at the opposite end. My kids are sleeping late now, so I get
I'm
a
so
lot of stuff
jealous.
in the morning.
I'm very jealous.
It'll happen. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have so much wonderful information that you are sharing with people through LinkedIn, through podcasts, through your TED Talks, and the new book that you put out again is called, can you remind me, Staying
Yes.
Grounded.
Yep. Yep. Staying grounded. It's available at Amazon, and I appreciate you highlighting it, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing. It's very important, and I think not only the fact because it's research based, but it gives tools to teachers, and that is going to be the very critical ingredient moving forward, is arming teachers with real practical ideas that they can apply both at home, as you said, and both at school at the same time. And I think that's going to be one of those things that schools really have to hyper focus on, not just a reentry plan, but how we're going to make sure our teachers get what they need and deserve as well.
I completely agree. Thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.